Hello everybody, Levi Clay here, back again to do another little chord lesson in the style of Mr. Allan Holdsworth, the late and great. So we're going to be looking at some chords like this today. Some interesting sounding chords. Get some really interesting sounding chords out of this concept. And the principle that we'll be talking about is chord scales and variations that we can do on standard chords to help find new chords that we can create interesting chord scales from. And from these you'll find voicings that you like and can start introducing into your own playing. So the principle is very simple. What is a chord scale? Well, a chord scale in traditional Western harmony would be where we take any diatonic chord. So in the case of if we take a C major 7, and we move that through the scale, we'd get C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7, A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, and back to our C major 7. Now you can do that with any kind of voicing. You could do it with, and if you've not got experience in that, what I'd recommend is you check out some videos on chord scales first of all before attempting this. What we're going to do is we're going to take that concept and bastardize it. So what I like to do if I'm thinking in A7, around 5th fret area of the neck, I will take perhaps this middle 4 strings, the middle 4 strings of an A chord. So that will give me 7, 7, 6 and 5 on the D, G, A, D, G and B strings, and I'll move that around my chord scale. So I'll just do a couple of chords at this stage. So if we take an A, we could then move up to a B minor. We could take our A, and below our A would be a G chord. Below that, an F sharp minor chord, E. So nothing particularly crazy there, but the interesting thing we can do with that is we can then adapt this chord voicing to create new sounds. So what I like to do is I'll often, when I'm playing over an A7 chord, I'll treat my A7 as a 13 chord and I'll put the 6th in there, and I can do that by moving the lowest note of that chord up a tone to the 6th of the chord, and that gives you this trickier to play but nice sounding A13 chord. And realistically, no, it's not an A13 chord, because you're kind of hearing it as the F sharp as the root, so like an F sharp minor 6 sound. But what we can do is then continue this logic and by moving up to our next shape. So where before we had this B minor, if we move the lowest note up a semitone to the next note in the scale, in our A7, A mixolydian mode, we get this, well, what is it? It's a G major 7. We can continue this if we move down. We're creating these nice sounds, and again down here, rather than playing our, I'd play, and again, if we move down to what would have been our E minor, move our B up to a C sharp. Now those in themselves aren't particularly Allan in sound, but it's a good exercise to be able to take any chord voicing and move it through a chord scale. Now what I like to do to really spice these up, and the reason I've got the guitar up in this position, is because we can then take things one step further. Once we've got these interesting sounding chords, we can then move the bottom note, sorry, the top note, the highest note, down to the next note down in the scale, and that's where things start to sound a little bit more interesting. So before we had this A6 sound, interesting sound, or an F sharp minor 7, but it's our A6. If I move the top note from an E down to a D, we get this. It's an interesting sound, right? Again, if I then move up to what was our next pattern, I can move that top note down from an F sharp to an E. So we've now got this. times. And you can keep going with this as a pattern. Again, F sharp major 7 becomes this strange F sharp 6 chord. Again, down, it becomes, and becomes moving that top note from a D down to a C sharp. So that's a way that I like to explore these voicings, and one that I found that was quite fun and quite enjoyable in sound, and you'll have to bear with me on this because there's a lot of walking around to get to this chord, but it's this principle of major 7 chords. So if you play around with major 7 chords, we take our drop voicings on the top strings. What I found when I played around with these, my fingers are dead now, I've covered those before and it's on my Lick Library instructional DVDs. I found that when I take the C major 7 up here and lower the top note down to the next note of the scale, you get this nice, it's like a C major 7 sus chord. So what I took from that is I like the sound of a C major 7 with the E lowered to the 9th, giving us, as I say, a C major 7 sus. Then I played around with that voicing, so if I take any C major 7 voicing and move the E down to a D, you get a voicing, an inversion of this C major 7 sus 2 chord. So one that I liked was to take this chord voicing and to move the E down to that D, and then you get this interesting, now that to me is a nice interesting sound. I'm then going to take that chord voicing and move every note up to the next note in a C major scale. So B moves up to C, D moves up to E, C moves up to D, and G moves up to A. So we get from our C major 7 sus chord, we then move up to. Now these aren't the sorts of things that you can just commit to memory. These are definitely things that you need to experiment with, sit and write the voicings down that you discover. And just keep the ones you like. Let's do the same thing again. So I'm going to move my C up to D. My E is going to move up to F, so on the top you have that. My D is going to move up to E, and my A will move up to a B. So we now have this trickier stretch. And you can just keep going with this as an approach. I can then move everything up again. So my B moves up to C, my E moves up to F, my F moves up to G, and what was I playing before? D moves up to E. So we get back to that voicing that we played before. So these are interesting voicings, right? And the one I really like is actually the one below this, which gives you this. Now to me that's a very Allan sounding chord. I really like that. And it's logical if we just take that voicing that we had before. I've moved everything down. So G moves down to F, C moves down to B, D moves down to C, and B moves down to A. So we have these 4 notes. Now to me that is interesting in itself. You can get some great sounding chords from that. But we can take things one step further for those of you that watched my video on the secret Allan Holdsworth chord. What I'm going to do now, before we were talking about major 7 sharp 5 chords, but now what we're going to do is we're going to use that sharp 5 concept as our pool of notes that we're drawing from. So in a C major 7 sharp 5 chord you have a G sharp. So I'm going to play those same chord voicings, but anytime there's a G in my chord, so when I play this chord, that lowest note is a G. I'm going to make it a G sharp to give it that major 7 sharp 5 sound. Allan Holdsworth sound. That's an interesting sound, really cool. And you can think of this as lots of things. You could think of it as chord scales where you have that sharp 5 in the scale, or it could be coming from so Ionian sharp 5, or it could be harmonic major. There's lots of ways that you can think of this, but I guess the way I'm thinking of it is that Ionian sharp 5 and major scale with a sharpened 5th, because I'm not flattening the 6th, I'm sharpening the 5th. There's a G sharp, not an A flat. So the voicings that we would then get would be, oops, my mistake. So that doesn't have a G in, so we keep that as is. Our next voicing, there's a G in that on the bottom, so I'm just going to move that up to a G sharp. Our next voicing, there's no G in that, there's no reason to change anything in that. Our notes, A, D, E, C, so no G to deal with. Then we have lovely sounding voicing. Let's check our notes, B, E, F, and D. So no G to move. Our next voicing would normally be this. Is there a G to move? Yes. G is on the B string, so I move that up a semitone, and we get this nice sounding, what to my ears at least is an Allan Holdsworth inspired chord. So we've now got a new chord scale pattern that we're playing. Let me just play that for you. To me, that's very Allan in sound. And we could just keep going with this as a concept, so let's just do that together. And these aren't, like I say, these aren't things I have committed to memory. It's the sort of thing that I do on the fly when I'm composing. So again, my C moves up to D, my F will move up to G, we'll change that in a second, my G moves up to A, and my E moves up to F. So we have, but again, I need to sharpen my G sharp to give us, so we have, so you get this nice, very interesting sounding chords. Whoops. So tricky, but definitely a lot of fun. And definitely inspired by Allan. Does that make sense to everybody out there? Hopefully so. If you have any questions about that, drop it in the comment box below, and I'm happy to answer anything that you have to ask. As I always say, check me out on Patreon by clicking that button up there. You can support this channel by clicking the subscribe button down here, and you can check out 2 of my other videos over there. Lots more guitar lessons and transcription things on this channel for you to enjoy. Peace out, guys. Pleasure to serve, and I'll be back for another video soon. Bye.